Most people think they're being responsible with their money. They're not reckless, they're not ignoring their finances, they're just waiting. Waiting until they earn more, waiting until things feel stable, waiting until they finally have enough money to start. And on the surface, that sounds smart. It sounds cautious. It sounds mature. But for most people, waiting until they have more money is the exact reason they never get ahead. By the end of this video, you'll understand why waiting feels safe, why it quietly holds people back for years, and what to do instead, without stress, overwhelm, or risky moves. Welcome to Aaron's Money Manual, where we simplify money so you can stress less, live more, and actually make your hard-earned cash work for you. And if you want more clear, no-nonsense money guidance like this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Most people don't say, "I'll never start." They say, "I'll start later." Later, when they're making more money. Later, when debt is gone. Later, when life calms down. Later, when things feel easier. And that word, later, is the trap. Because later feels responsible. It feels like patience. It feels like you're avoiding mistakes. But in reality, later is often just fear wearing a responsible disguise. Let's talk about why waiting feels like the right move. When money is tight, starting anything new feels risky. You think, why would I invest, save, or plan when I barely have enough already? So you tell yourself, once I get a raise, then I'll start. Once I pay off this debt, then I'll focus on the future. Once I have more breathing room, then I'll invest. The problem is, that moment almost never arrives the way people imagine it. Life doesn't pause and suddenly hand you a calm, perfect financial window. Expenses grow, responsibilities increase, and what once felt like not enough money quietly becomes your new normal. So the starting line keeps moving. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't like hearing. You don't start once things get easier. Things get easier because you start. Progress doesn't come from waiting for ideal conditions. It comes from building habits in imperfect ones. Let's look at what waiting actually costs, because this is where the trap becomes visible. When people wait, they think they're delaying risk, but what they're really delaying is time, and time is the one resource money can't replace. If you start early with small amounts, time does most of the heavy lifting. If you start late, you're forced to rely on larger contributions and more effort to catch up. Waiting doesn't feel expensive in the moment, but it's incredibly expensive over years. Imagine two people. One starts with very little money. They invest or save consistently, even when it feels small and almost pointless. The other waits. They want to feel ready. They want confidence. They want stability first. 10 years later, the first person hasn't done anything flashy, but they've built momentum. The second person now has more money, but no system, no habit, and no head start. And that gap isn't about intelligence or income. It's about starting. This is where people get stuck mentally. They believe small actions don't matter, that if the amount isn't impressive, the effort isn't worth it. But money doesn't grow from big decisions alone. It grows from consistent ones. Starting small isn't a weakness, it's how momentum is created. Here's another reason waiting is such a powerful trap. Waiting trains your brain to avoid action. Every time you say, "I'll start later," you reinforce a habit of delay. And over time, delay becomes your default response. You stop asking, "What can I do now?" and start asking, "Why isn't now good enough?" That mindset spreads, not just in money, but in health, career, and life. People often assume confidence comes before action, but it's the opposite. Confidence is built through action. No one feels ready when they start managing money intentionally. They feel ready after they've done it long enough to trust themselves. Waiting keeps you stuck in uncertainty. Starting, even imperfectly, creates clarity. Let's talk about the emotional side of this. Waiting feels safe because it avoids discomfort. Starting forces you to make decisions, accept uncertainty, and take responsibility. And responsibility can feel heavy when money already feels stressful. So waiting becomes a coping mechanism. It gives you psychological relief in the short term, even though it costs you long term. Another hidden problem with waiting is that it creates an all or nothing mindset. People think, if I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. So instead of starting small, they wait to start big. But money doesn't reward perfection, it rewards consistency. You don't need the perfect plan. You need a simple one that you actually follow. Here's something most people don't realize. The amount you start with matters far less than the fact that you start. Starting builds awareness. Awareness builds confidence. Confidence builds consistency. Waiting builds none of those. Let's address a common fear directly. Many people are afraid of starting because they're worried about making mistakes. They think, what if I do it wrong? But the biggest financial mistakes usually come from inaction, not action. Inflation erodes money that sits still. Opportunities pass unnoticed. Habits never form. Small mistakes made early are cheap. Big mistakes made late are expensive. Waiting also creates a false sense of security. People think holding off is the safer option, but doing nothing is still a decision, and it has consequences. Money that isn't being directed intentionally will always find a way to disappear. Starting gives you control. Waiting gives control to time, inflation, and circumstance. So what should you do instead of waiting? You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need to take big risks. You don't need to suddenly become a finance expert. You need to shift from waiting for readiness to building readiness. Here's the mindset shift that changes everything. Stop asking, is this enough to start? Start asking, what's the smallest version of this I can begin today? That question removes pressure. It turns an overwhelming decision into a manageable one. Starting small does a few powerful things. It lowers emotional resistance. It makes mistakes less costly. It creates momentum without stress. And momentum is what carries you forward when motivation fades. Let's be clear about something. Starting small does not mean thinking small. It means respecting reality. It means working with your current situation instead of waiting for a fantasy version of your life where everything is easier. Another reason waiting fails is that people underestimate how long habits take to form. They think once they have more money, they'll automatically manage it better. But money doesn't create discipline. Discipline creates better outcomes with money. If you don't practice managing small amounts, large amounts won't magically fix that. People often say, I'll be more intentional once I have more. But intention isn't something you switch on, it's something you practice. Waiting delays that practice. Here's a simple truth that changes perspective. The goal isn't to have more money before you start. The goal is to become the type of person who handles money well. That identity is built through repetition, not income. So what does starting look like in real life? It looks boring, it looks unimpressive, it looks small, but it works. It looks like setting something up once and letting consistency do the work. It looks like removing decision fatigue instead of relying on willpower. Waiting keeps everything theoretical. Starting makes it real. And once it's real, you learn faster, adjust sooner, and build confidence naturally. Here's the irony of waiting. People delay starting because they don't want to feel stressed, but waiting often creates more stress. Because deep down, they know they're avoiding something important. Starting replaces vague anxiety with concrete progress. Let's bring this together. Waiting until you have more money feels responsible, but in reality, it delays time, habits, confidence, and growth. Starting small feels uncomfortable at first, but it builds momentum, clarity, and control. The difference between people who get ahead and people who don't usually isn't income, it's action. Here's your challenge. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for more money. Don't wait for clarity. Pick one small step that moves you forward and commit to it, not because it's impressive, but because it's consistent. Most people stay stuck because they keep waiting for permission. You don't need permission. You need momentum. Start where you are. Use what you have. Let time work with you instead of against you. Because the real trap isn't starting too early. It's waiting so long that time does the damage for you. Thank you for watching Aaron's Money Manual. I am grateful for everyone's support, and I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch and learn. Please like, comment, and subscribe for weekly videos, and share this video with anyone you think might benefit from a simple, stress-free approach to investing. If you haven't yet, check out my recent videos for more helpful tips and strategies to take control of your finances. I hope you find them useful, and I can't wait to share more actionable advice with you in future videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.